McLaren has achieved what it once thought impossible this year: won the Formula 1 World Championship as a customer team. Granted, it's only won the Constructors title, the lesser one in the eyes of a world obsessed with the Drivers' Championship, but it's a huge achievement for the team. Not only does it mean a massive payday given prize money is paid based on the Constructors' Championship position, but it also ends a 15-season title drought for McLaren, and it's a title won while relying on a customer power unit supply deal from Mercedes. This was something that, just 6 years ago, then McLaren racing director Eric Bouillet said could not be done without being a works team. You could win races, he argued, but not a championship. He said this at a time when McLaren was a Renault customer, having ended its ill-starred partnership with Honda after the 2017 season. And remember, that Honda deal was originally signed because McLaren felt a works partnership was essential for it to return to the top in F1. This was after it was downgraded from Mercedes' works team to customer when the Silver Arrows brought Brawn ahead of 2010 to create today's Mercedes squad. And Brawn in 2009 was effectively the last customer team to win the World Championship. Yes, Red Bull was a Renault customer in 2010 at the start of a run when it won 4 consecutive title doubles, but it was already Renault's frontline team after Renault sold its works operation at the end of 2009. That relationship then became more formal from 2011. As managing director Jonathan Neal put it in 2013, reuniting with Honda for 2015 was supposed to allow McLaren to punch at the weight of a works team. McLaren enjoyed modest success in its 3 years with Renault customer engines from 2018 to 2020, climbing the midfield and bagging the occasional podium finish. But in September 2019, a Mercedes deal was signed covering 2021 to 2025. The latest contract, signed in 2023, means McLaren will use Mercedes power units until at least 2030. As Zak Brown said at the time, the Mercedes deal meant McLaren now had what it believed to be F1's best engine powering it. Mercedes engines played a part in McLaren re-emerging as a race-winning force. In 2021, Daniel Ricciardo's victory in the Italian Grand Prix ended a win drought that stretched back almost 9 years to Jenson Button's victory in Brazil in November 2012. The revival peaked this year with McLaren emerging as a regular race winner and beating 2 works teams, Red Bull with its Honda supply and Ferrari, to the Constructors' Championship. McLaren has also comprehensively outperformed engine supplier Mercedes and its works team. As team principal Andrea Stella puts it, the successful pursuit of the Constructors' Championship has been an unbelievable quest for McLaren. This is despite a difficult start to the season. McLaren started 2024 on the back foot, partly thanks to Red Bull taking a big stride forward, having parked development of its 2023 car relatively early in the season. However, McLaren took a huge step of its own with a major upgrade package at the Miami Grand Prix. This included a new floor and modified side pods, as well as new front wing and other aerodynamic improvements throughout the car. From there on, the game changed. While McLaren missed some opportunities, Imola, Monaco, Canada, Spain and Austria were all potentially winnable races in the first half of the year that slipped through the net. It emerged as a consistent front-runner. Ferrari and Red Bull came back at it in the closing stages, but thanks to heavy scoring from both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, McLaren sealed the Constructors' title in the Abu Dhabi season finale. McLaren also benefited from Ferrari's mid-season wobble, the run that followed a misfiring floor upgrade at the Spanish Grand Prix in late June, triggering porpoising problems, and Sergio Perez's slump in the second Red Bull. But since taking the points lead through Oscar Piastri's brilliant win in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, McLaren has led the way to take its first Constructors' title since 1998.
If you're looking for a Grand Prix that stands out even in F1's longest ever seasons, the Formula 1 Heineken Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort is the answer. From a unique seaside location and history to passionate packed crowds and off-track entertainment, the Dutch GP is much more than just an F1 race. Zandvoort has hosted some classics since 1952, and now of course it's the home of superstar Max Verstappen and his legion of orange-clad fans. But all supporters are welcome, and with McLaren's growing competitiveness, orange isn't always for Verstappen. The distinctive circuit layout sweeping through sand dunes is evident as soon as you walk in and makes it a spectacular place to watch F1 cars. Zandvoort's novel location is also conveniently within reach, as it's only 30 minutes from Schiphol Airport. The great city of Amsterdam turns 750 next year and is just a short journey from Zandvoort by train or bus. The canals, museums and lively atmosphere make it one of the most visited tourist destinations in Europe. There's not just the racing to look forward to either. Zandvoort has entertainment, culture and top international artists to bring the party. Superstar DJ Armin van Buuren headlined Super Friday last year, and 2025 promises to be even bigger. To register your interest in tickets for the 2025 Dutch GP, follow the link in the description.
While it's true to say that McLaren's Mercedes engine deal is very much a customer one, unlike when it was the works Mercedes team from 1995 to 2009, it's a little different to the usual supply contract. That's not in terms of what it gets from Mercedes. In fact, McLaren only takes the power unit and ancillaries, which means it has full control over its own gearbox design. That's essential because the gearbox casing is integral to rear suspension geometry, which is why F1 teams usually call it the suspension carrier. That means McLaren is free to diverge from Mercedes in a key performance area and gain an advantage. But what McLaren does have is a direct input into the development of the Mercedes power unit packaging. The works team always has the final say, but it's not simply a case of you get what you are given. McLaren offers its own feedback and ideas to Mercedes-Benz high-performance powertrains and feels that it is actively listened to. Inevitably, if there's a difference of opinion, the works team will hold sway, but this is a collaborative process where McLaren's good ideas are heeded. The strong recent form of McLaren, particularly relative to struggling Mercedes, also means its voice is likely to be listened to. You could almost argue this makes McLaren a de facto semi-works team, even if the final decision will always be made by Mercedes. Allied to this, McLaren is also happy with the flow of information from Mercedes HPP in terms of the details of specifications and getting these early enough, which is crucial to its own design work. McLaren CEO, Zak Brown, admits that there is still an advantage for the works team in terms of the awareness of and input into the power unit packaging, but his claim that a customer team doing a good job can compensate for that has been borne out by McLaren's title success this year. F1 as a whole has also worked hard to cut the disparity between works and non-works teams over the years. There are measures in the current regulations to ensure parity when it comes to the power unit specification. This was originally brought in by technical directive in 2018 before being incorporated into the regulations. Today this resides in Appendix 4 of the F1 technical regulations, Article 2.4 to be precise. This requires each power unit manufacturer to supply what's called a homologation dossier to all its teams. It states that all power units must be identical, save for the permitted variations in fuel and oil specification, wirings, and what are called minor parts requiring incidental modification. They must also run with identical software for power unit control and be capable of being operated in precisely the same way. That means you have the same engine modes available, unlike in the early days of the current hybrid power unit rules when the supplier could limit what customers ran. Brown calls that the key change that brought total parity between works teams and customers. This also means that there's no difference in the specification of engines and no opportunity to supply year-old engines. The last time a team ran year-old engines was in 2017, when Sauber ran the 2016 spec Ferrari power units. And while the very best parts will always go to the works team, these will simply be those of the same design that come out best within the tiny manufacturing tolerances. But as Stella says, any such difference would be trivial given it might mean an extra 1 kilowatt of power, which would only be worth a few milliseconds. As for the aforementioned potential for variation in fuel and oil, the rules stipulate this is only the case if an alternative supply is preferred by the customer. The upshot of this is that if you are a customer team, you get the exact same power unit package, the exact same engine modes, the exact same performance potential as the works team. The days when you might be 50 horsepower or more down than effectively a second-class citizen are long gone, and that's to McLaren's benefit. Stella argues that the combination of the regulations and the collaboration with Mercedes means that blaming not being a works team if it wasn't succeeding would just be an excuse. And making excuses is something Stella has worked hard to eliminate culturally at McLaren, which has played a big part in its remarkable improvements. So now McLaren is on top of the F1 world, the big question is whether it can stay there, particularly with the major regulations overhaul coming in 2026. Many of the factors that put it in a strong position as a customer team will remain in place. The measures requiring identical power unit specifications are no different, and the relationship with Mercedes will remain unchanged. However, power unit development was frozen in 2022, with designs locked in either in March or September and carried through to the end of 2025. This means that there have been no changes since then, giving McLaren a stable power unit package. So not only are the new power units with a 50-50 split of conventional and hybrid power completely different, but development will be ongoing. Fundamentally, McLaren's relationship with Mercedes will remain as it is, and Stella is certain there will be no political problems and the good technical dialogue will continue. The future is bright for McLaren and Mercedes, although a key question is how development resources are allocated to 2025 versus 2026 in the coming months. Do you go all out for another championship or two next year, even if it compromises the following year, or take a more balanced approach and ensure you maximise your chances of remaining at the front in 26? That's for Stella and the senior technical leadership to decide. In the long term, there's no doubt McLaren will continue to seek a potential works deal because there is still a little more potential to be squeezed from such an alliance, not to mention potential commercial advantages. But any such deal is a very long way off, and as Stella has warned in the past, you're better off being a customer of a strong manufacturer than the partner of a mediocre one. In that regard, McLaren is in a strong position for its 2024 Constructors' Championship success not to be a one-off.